In this lesson, we're going to go over the defense of duress, which is actually a pretty straightforward defense, so we should be able to get through this lesson relatively quickly. Here, under the defense of duress, we say generally a defendant is entitled to acquittal for any offense except murder if the following 5 elements are satisfied. So it is important to recognize off the top that this defense does not apply if the defendant is being charged with murder. In other words, right, the defendant cannot successfully assert a duress defense to a murder charge. So if we're looking at a fact pattern and it looks like a defendant is being coerced to commit some type of murder and the defendant actually goes out and commits that murder under this coercion, right, he's not going to be able to assert duress as a defense to the murder. Just one note to make, but if we're dealing with any other type of offense, right, then duress would be a possibility, right? And we'd apply the following 5 elements to determine whether or not the defendant could successfully assert the defense of duress. Number 1, we do need a threat of deadly force, right? We need another person, some coercer, to threaten to kill or cause grievous bodily injury to the defendant or a third party unless the defendant commits the crime in question. So we'll see that one theme with duress is all of these elements are interpreted very narrowly, very strictly, right? So we do need a coercer, a human being, right? A dog attacking a defendant, or a strike of lightning, some natural force, or some sort of animal, snarling at a person. This is not a threat of another person, right? Unless, right, obviously that animal, that dog is being controlled by a human being, right? That would be different, but just a wild animal attack in the wilderness, something like that, that is not duress. That's not another person making a threat to kill or cause grievous bodily injury. Right? So number 1, we need a human being that is trying to coerce the defendant, right? We need a coercer who's a human being, right? That person, that coercer, has to threaten to kill or cause grievous bodily injury to the defendant or a third party, right? So it can't just be any threat, right? It can't be a threat to harm someone's reputation, like something like, hey, I'm going to release these embarrassing photos of you unless you commit this crime, right? That's not a threat to kill or cause grievous bodily injury. It can't be a threat to cause, economic loss, something like, hey, if you don't go out and commit this crime, I'm going to take this money from you, right? Not going to work. It has to be a threat to kill or cause grievous bodily injury to the defendant or a third party. So we're looking for something like, hey, go out and commit this crime for me, or I'm going to kill you or your family members, right? Or I'm going to cause grievous bodily injury to you or your family members, right? Usually what we're seeing here is someone's pointing a deadly weapon at the defendant or one of the defendant's loved ones, right? The coercer has a gun or a knife, some sort of deadly weapon, and is actually threatening the defendant, right? And usually this is all happening at gunpoint or knife point or whatever the weapon that's being used is, right? So we do need that coercer. We need another person threatening to kill or cause grievous bodily injury to the defendant or a third party unless the defendant commits the offense. So again, what we're looking for here is, hey, go steal that money, go steal this car outside, or I'm going to shoot you and kill you, right? That's the type of threat we're looking for, right? Number 2, the defendant has to reasonably believe that the threat is genuine, right? So here, if the defendant has some reasonable reason to believe that the threat is not genuine, then he's not going to be considered under duress, right? If it's obvious that the coercer is really not being serious, is kind of half joking, or it's really impossible for the coercer to carry out what he's threatening, right? If the coercer is in like a different country at the time or something and like can't possibly actually carry out the threat, right? If there's any reasonable reason for the defendant to believe that the threat was not genuine, then he's not under duress, right? So we'd be looking for, where the coercer's not really being serious, he's just joking around, or the coercer's really far away, like calling the defendant, but really can't carry out the threat at all. It's not a serious threat. Anything along those lines would not satisfy element number 2. Number 3 and 4 kind of operate together, right? We need the threat for the defense to be successful, right? The threat needs to be present, imminent, and impending at the time of the criminal act, and there can't be a reasonable means of escape from the threat except through compliance with the demands of the coercer. Right, we'll see that these two elements operate together and really have the effect of, the way I like to think of this is basically at the time the defendant is committing the criminal act, he basically has to have that deadly weapon pointed at him, right? The gun has to be to his head, the knife has to be to his throat, right? At the time he's carrying out this crime, right, that coercer has to have that deadly weapon pointed at him or one of his loved ones, is really how strictly these two elements are applied in a lot of cases, right? Because number 1, we say the threat has to be present, imminent, and impending at the time of the criminal act. Probably the best example of this is a really seminal case called State v. Rosillo. Right, in this case, Rosillo is a police informant, right? And so he's going to testify against this suspected drug dealer. Of course, the suspected drug dealer finds out about this and is not pleased. So before the trial, the suspected drug dealer goes out with some of his assailants. They put on, masks, whatever, and they attack Rosillo. And they basically say they almost like hit him with a car. They make a bunch of threats. And they basically say, hey, look, if you testify at this trial against me, we're going to kill you. So a few days pass, whatever, we get to trial, right? And Rosillo takes the stand, and obviously he's very afraid for his life, right? So when he gets up to testify, he does not tell the truth. He makes false statements out of fear of his life, right? So of course, he's eventually tried with perjury, right? He's making false statements under penalty of perjury, so he's eventually charged with the crime of perjury, right? And that, as a defense to this perjury charge, he tries to assert the defense of duress. And the court says in that case, essentially, right, Rosillo, the informant, the threat that was made to him was not present, imminent, and impending at the time of the criminal act. When he was on the stand, actually committing this crime of perjury, right, the threat to kill him was not imminent and impending, right? The assailant who threatened him, the suspected drug dealer, was not there, there was no gun pointed at him, right? He was under his own free will as he's there giving this testimony, right? So in that case, the court says, and if we think about this in conjunction with element number 4, right, he does have reasonable escape from the threat, he doesn't have to comply with the threat to escape from it at that moment in time, right? He had some options. He could have, told the court what was going on. He had time leading up to the trial to, try to reach out to somebody, try to tell the police what's happening. Maybe even at the trial, he tells, the judge what's happening. He could slide a note to somebody, right? Lots of options to escape this threat, right? So generally the rule here is threats of future harm are insufficient for the defense of duress, and that's applied pretty strictly, right? And so the court does reason in Rosillo, if this suspected drug dealer, the coercer, right, who's making these threats, had been present in the courtroom or was even outside the courtroom, with a gun pointed at Rosillo through a window of the courthouse, then Rosillo would have had a present, imminent, and impending threat at the time of the criminal act. In that case, he probably could successfully assert that duress defense. But without the gun pointed at him, unable to successfully assert the duress defense. Thank you so much for watching this video preview of our Legal Education Accelerator Program, or LEAP, for short. If you would like to see the conclusion of this video and gain full access to our entire 1L and 2L video library, integrated outlines, streamable audio versions, additional practice exams with explanations, and much more, we invite you to head over to our website and join the thousands of law students who have already enrolled. To get started with your no-risk free trial today, simply click the link in the description box below or visit www.studicata.com/leap.
Hi everyone, my name is Serena and I'm currently a law student at South Texas College of Law, Houston.
Hi everybody, my name is Shiva and I'm currently a law student at Southwestern.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and I am a first year student at South Texas College of Law, Houston. I used the Studicata study video series last semester to help me prepare mostly for contracts, and I actually made an A+ in contracts last semester, which I greatly dedicate to the Studicata videos.
By using Studicata to help me prepare for my final exam, I was able to score the highest grade out of my class on the final and even have my essay distributed as the model answer. Not to mention I had done quite poorly on the midterm and was struggling throughout the whole course of the semester, understanding the material and keeping up with lectures.
Because of the Studicata video lectures, I was able to go into my exams with a feeling of confidence. I didn't have to worry about what the rules of law were or how I was going to organize my answer to an essay question.
I would absolutely recommend the Studicata series and their online course materials to anyone. I think that they are not like professor lectures that you might find online or other outside study materials that you may encounter. I think that the Studicata videos really focus on not only ensuring that you understand the material that you're going to encounter on your final, but they also help you to understand kind of the best method for test taking, and they really break down how to approach each problem and the best ways to tackle certain methods on testing, and I think that's really important, and I think it's really special. I don't see that anywhere else in any of the other online resources that I've found. So I would certainly recommend Studicata to anyone who is studying in law school right now. Good luck on your studying and you're going to do great.
I would definitely recommend Studicata to anybody watching this video. Give it a chance. I'm positive that you will love it, that you will get a lot out of it, and that you will be happy that you gave it a chance. I definitely am. I know I will be using Studicata in the future.
And I cannot thank Studicata enough for getting me through my first semester of law school. I will definitely continue to watch the Studicata video lectures throughout my law school career, and I highly recommend that any future or current law student do the same.